Continuing with our preparing for Pesach, we discussed earlier in the Memra and the Haggadah, Afilu kulanu chachomim, kulanu nevoinim, kulanu zakenim, kulanu yoidim es haTorah, mitzvah aleinu l'saper b'yetzias Mitzrayim, v'chol amar b'lesaper harei Mashbiyach. Why dafka over here? Kol amar b'lesaper b'yetzias Mitzrayim harei Mashbiyach. Why over here do we emphasize that we should say it over more and more and keep on being Mesaper Yetzias Mitzrayim? Why the dogesh? Why the emphasis dafka on this mitzvah of Yetzias Mitzrayim? And we discussed earlier one approach to this topic. Perhaps we can offer an additional approach. Let us think a little bit and let us discuss a little bit by Yetzias Mitzrayim. Doesn't it seem to be incredible that we can't even fathom how is this possible that a whole nation of slaves who were slaves their entire lives, their parents, their grandparents, slaves for 210 years. How did they have the koyach? How did they have the strength? How did they have the conviction to go out of Mitzrayim just with their belongings and go into the wilderness and go into Yam Suf and into the desert and have faith in the Rabbeinu Shalom and risk their lives and make themselves totally dependent on Hashem and leave everything behind and go into this wilderness without a rational, logical means of sustaining themselves, with no food and water, and to travel through the Midbar to go to Eretz Yisrael, to think that they would be able to go to Eretz Yisrael and conquer all the mighty nations that inhabit Eretz Yisrael. That they were going to go, this nation of slaves, who had nothing, who were not trained in anything except the basic manual labor of building pyramids. And they were going to go into the wilderness without any rational mean of sustaining themselves through the desert and the Yam Suf in the desert. And they were going to go and conquer Eretz Yisrael from all the mighty warriors and from the entire civilization that inhabited Eretz Yisrael. And they were going to overpower and conquer them. Now, this is a nation that didn't have the Torah. They didn't have the Torah. They were a nation of slaves without the Torah. What gave them that strength? What gave them that emunah? What gave them that conviction to go? Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, Hashem is saving you. Yes, they saw the miracles. But nevertheless, where did they have that strength? And the answer is that for the most part, they didn't. They were given that strength from the Rabbeinu Shalom. It was given to them. Now, of course, it had to come, Isarusa Dilatata, there had to come from an Isairis from themselves. There had to be an Avodah. There had to be a Bechira and a Avodah, and there had to be a choice that they made. They wanted to follow Moshe Rabbeinu. They wanted to follow Hashem. They were Maminim, B'nai Maminim. But that strength, the ultimate strength that they had to be able to do this, to march off into the wilderness and go and conquer Eretz Yisrael, that came from Hashem. Yisarusa D'Leilo, a hashpah from the Rabbeinu Shalom that came down and lifted them up. They were soared on the wings of eagles. The Rabbeinu Shalom gave that to them. Now there's a very important yesod from the Ramchal in Derech Hashem. The Ramchal in Derech Hashem says that this hashpah that the Rabbeinu Shalom gave to them is the source of all that's good for us. He subjugated the Ra He broke their bondage. He elevated them. And that was the source of all that's good in Klal Yisrael. And he says, every time that we mention Yetzias Mitzrayim, every time we talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're maming Yetzias Mitzrayim, the more and all that we talk about it, that hashpah continues to come in a Shemayim. That hashpah, that oira, to push away the darkness, to push away the ra, to elevate us, to bring us closer to Hashem, that can be recreated every time we mention Yetzias Mitzrayim, and certainly, Leil Pesach, Leil Seder. And that's the greatest time for the hashpah. The time, the Moanim of the years, they're not just marking a historical event. It's not just talking and reminding ourselves of what happened then. Because what happened then is what happens now as well. It's recreated now as well. On that day, when we have Tesvav Nisan, the hashpahs of Yetzias Mitzrayim are recreated. And we can connect to that hashpah. And that hashpah that breaks the bondage and that elevates us and brings us closer to Hashem can be recreated Pesach night. It can be recreated every day and every night. But especially so, Leil HaSeder. So we can readily understand that afilu kolonu chachamim, kolonu nevan, kolonu zaken, kolonu yodim es ha-Torah, even though we know the Torah, and we know what happened, and we know what the Torah says, and we know about Yetzias Mitzrayim, but we talk about it. We talk about it again and again. V'chol hamar b'reizim meshubach, because we will be able to get that influence, that hashpah, that oira. And even chachamim, and certainly chachamim, they'll be able to get more and more of that oira, the oir from the Ribbono Shel Olam. The Alter from Kelm says, Kol hamar b'lesaper harei zeh meshubach. He says he's Mashbiyach himself. He's Mashbiyach his guf. It's meshubach. He makes himself better. He improves himself. Harei zeh meshubach. He's Mashbiyach himself. He improves himself. In a similar way, the Sfas Emes says, Kol hamar b'harei zeh meshubach. It doesn't only mean that if a person does this, he's praiseworthy. It doesn't only mean if a person's a siman. It shows, he was marbe, he was Isaac in the mitzvah, he engaged more in the mitzvah. It shows that he is a righteous person. It shows it's a siman that he's a good person. No, it's not only a siman. Harei zeh meshubach. He elevates himself. He becomes meshubach. He becomes more and more, because the more we engage in this, the better and greater we become. And that's part of the avodah of Leil HaSeder, of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, to be able to break that bondage that each and every one of us have, that avdus, that shibud, that each and every one of us have, that we're bound and we're tied to our limitations, to the aspects of Olam Hazeh and the culture around us that are a bad influence on us, that we have some connection to the Ra that's all around us, that we are tied down to the bondage of our katnus, our limitations. We have an ability, an unbelievable ability, especially Leil Seder, to break that avdus, to break that shibud, to lessen that shibud to katnus, to dvorim roim, to influences that divert our attention and divert us from our potential, that limit us in our potential in avodas Hashem. And this is the wonderful opportunity of Leil Seder, of Pesach. It's the opportunity to grow. It's the opportunity to become bigger and better, to become greater. And we shouldn't lose this opportunity and let the Yetzer Hara divert our attention from this great, wonderful potential. Klal Yisrael had that era, that had that ashpah min hashamayim, where the Rebbeinu Shalom took them on kanfei neshorim. He broke the shibud. He broke their bondage, not only the physical bondage, not only the avdus that they had to work for Paro and Mitzrayim, but he broke and severed that bondage that tied them down and made them into avodim. And he broke that and gave them a shpah of toiv, of oira, that allowed them to grow higher and higher and become an Am Hashem, and to become great people, and become Avanivchar, and to be Makabel the Torah. That's the ruchnius de kashid ma'avdus lecherus. That's the ruchnius de cherus that they were zoichet to, and that's the avoida of Leila Seder that we can be zoichet to. And how did they do it? Of course, it was a matona, but there was avoida that they had to do. They wanted to be free. They wanted the cherus, and there was a preparation that went into it. So on Yud Nisan, they took a seh for the Korban Pesach. They took what was the Avodah Zorah of the Mitzrim. They took the Avodah Zorah of the Egyptians, and they took it and they tied it to their post, and they said they're going to shecht this Avodah Zorah for the Korban Pesach. So they put themselves in danger. They were Meiser Nefesh. And they took the dam of this and they put it on the mashkaf and the mezuzos. They prepared themselves with Dam Pesach and Dam Milo. They were Meiser Nefesh. They had the Rotzen. They wanted to become free from Mitzrayim in all respects. So they were Meiser Nefesh. They prepared themselves with Dam Pesach, with Dam Milo. They said Hallel. They were rejoicing over the fact that not only they weren't slaves anymore in the physical sense, rejoicing that Hallel, that they could be Oivdei Hashem. And that's part of what we have to do. We have to want to have the Hashpah Ruchni. There is that Hashpah Ruchni. There is that ability to grow and become greater and better, but we have to want it, and we have to prepare for it. We have to do an avodah that prepares ourselves for us for this. As part of Pesach is preparedness. To engage in the avodah of preparing for Pesach, and to have the rotzen. Lahavdil elef havdolas, they say over a joke, Lahavdil. They say over a joke, they ask the question, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? How many psychiatrists to change a light bulb? How many does it take? And the answer is, it only takes one. But the light bulb has to really want to change. In order to change and become bigger and better and greater, and be able to connect to this Hashpah Ruchni on Pesach, we have to want it. We have to want it, want to become better, want to become bigger, want to become more Ruchni, want to sever the ties of the bondage of the culture, the host culture that surrounds us, with the Dvorim Roim that surrounds us, with our own limitations, self-imposed limitations that tie us down. We have to have a rotzen to break loose from that. And part of that comes with the avodah of preparing for Pesach, in all respects, in every respects. The avodah that goes into before Pesach, the searching for chometz, which is of course representative of the chometz, the Yetzer Hara, and the introspection and searching into the depths of our neshama, the depths of our soul, and see where we can improve ourselves and be masakin ourselves. We have to want to make the tikkun. We have to have introspection to see where we're lacking. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom will help us to overcome that. But we have to search out and seek, where is that chometz? Where are we lacking in our neshamas? And want to sever those ties and want to improve. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom will help us improve. Part of Pesach, traditionally, has always been for women, for men, to search out the chometz, prepare for Pesach, the cooking for Pesach, etc. On a personal level, it was one of the most wonderful sights that I had the last few weeks when, Baruch Hashem, my granddaughters for the last few Motzei Shabbos called up my wife and asking, Bubby, can we help you cook and bake for Pesach? And that's what a Motzei Shabbos, a great treat for a Motzei Shabbos treat is, and that's what it should be. Wanting to prepare for Pesach, wanting to engage ourselves in Pesach, wanting to do all the preparations of Bir Chometz and the matzahs and preparations. Nowadays, there are all kinds of shortcuts that people can take, but if we take too many shortcuts, we might be shortchanging ourselves. It's the avodah to seek out the chometz, the avodah to want to change. And that is a unique characteristic of Klal Yisrael. Just recently, I encountered this past Shabbos a younger man that was learning in Eretz Yisrael by Rav Tzvi Kaplan, Shlita. He was in Shana Rishona. He came back for Pesach. He came over, Shalom Aleichem. The first question he asked me is, have I changed? Have I changed? Has a ratzon to change, has a ratzon to improve, a ratzon to be better and greater. And that's a unique characteristic of Klal Yisrael. And that's part of the avodah, the unique avodah of Pesach. It's our avodah the entire year. And we get Siyata D'Shmaya the entire year. But Pesach night, I have this unique opportunity. And it would be the worst thing is to squander this opportunity and shortchange ourselves and take shortcuts when we have an opportunity to become free, become B'nai Chayrin, free from shibudim, our neshama, our limitations, our attachment to things that are tying us down, and are a mechitza between us and the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom should bench us that we should have this chus and this Siyata D'Shmaya to be matzliach in this avodah and connect with this great oyer, this great Hashhavua min hashamayim that Rebbeinu Shalom is prepared and wants to give us.